With the upcoming 4th season of Star Wars Rebels about to kick off on Mandalore, and we get to see clans, houses, and factions, what do we know about them from before? Having looked in a previous video at Mandalorian houses, clans, factions, and Star Wars The Clone Wars, it's now a great opportunity for us to look at Star Wars Rebels Season 2. In Star Wars Rebels Season 2, there's only one episode that we hear and learn about Mandalorian houses, factions, clans, and all that, and that is the Protectors of Concord Dawn. In the Protector of Concord Dawn, we get to hear more about Sabine. We haven't really heard much about her, but here we get to hear about her house, her clan, and even her faction.
I'm Clan Ren, House Vizsla.
House Vizsla? She's Death Watch. Traitor!
After Sabine identifies her house and her clan, she's readily identified as being with Death Watch, and Fen Rao calls her house out as being enemies of the Protectors.
Your house is an enemy to the Protectors.
However, Sabine is quick to point out that
My mother was, but I'm not.
these tidbits that we get to hear about Sabine, as well as Fen Rao and these Protectors, it's interesting to think about what more there is out there. Apparently, this is just the beginning of what we get to hear about Mandalorian houses, factions, and clans, as Dave Filoni tells us.
Sabine being a Mandalorian, we wanted to get more into the story of who she is and where she comes from. This episode kind of starts us down that path. You start to understand where Sabine's mother's affiliation was.
Not only does Dave Filoni tell us this is just the beginning, but Pablo Hidalgo says, oh, this is just the tip of it. And they had actually explored this in the Clone Wars.
We're just at the tip of the Mandalorian iceberg when it comes to Sabine's history. It really builds on a lot of exploration that Dave and I did back during the Clone Wars. He had this rather elaborate tapestry in mind of how the various Mandalorian clans connect to one another and what the tensions may have been in the timeline leading up to the events of the Clone Wars.
So what is this structure of Mandalorian houses and clans and all that? How exactly does that work?
It's all structured kind of like a pyramid structure to me. There was a ruler of Mandalore. The ruler of Mandalore has for themselves the Protectors, and they make up these King's Guard, and that maintains balance within this warrior culture. Below that, there are separate houses. Houses are like the big faction. There would be House Kryze, which is Satine, House Vizsla, and beneath them, they have clans. Multiple clans will work under a house. So they're like smaller families. Ren is one of these families that is actually allied with Vizsla.
Now that we got to hear Dave Filoni tell us about that, I wanted to take a peek at what we hear about Concord Dawn.
Concord Dawn is known for its elite warriors. They were brought in to train clones back in the war. Bet even the Empire thinks twice about a fight with them.
Who are they loyal to? The Empire does occupy their homeworld of Mandalore, so Imperial influence could be a factor.
Years before the Clone Wars broke out, the Mandalorians were already at war with each other. This group called themselves the Protectors. They like to make up their own rules.
Diplomacy. Warriors like these only understand strength.
He's got a point. This system has endured more than 100 wars. My people don't need a reason to pick a fight.
And finally, one of the neatest things we learn about Mandalorian culture is this invoking of single combat, which is really neat.
I came here to settle a score, and I invoke the code to seek justice through single combat.
No one has invoked the code since the Empire took over.
Well, who's in charge here? The Empire or Mandalore?
Call out your opponent for combat to the death.
I thought you'd never ask. I call out you, Fen Rao.
That's what we get in one episode of Star Wars Rebels in the 2nd season. We get to hear more about Mandalorian culture, about what's happened, and of course, their family structures. So stay tuned. I hope to do one on season 3.